Welcome to Wisdom of the World. Today's story is a story from Mexico, and it's about, how you have to fight sometimes for your love. It's called Rosalie, and it goes like this. A young man had set out in the world to make a bit of money, and he came upon a hut where a giant lived, and he had 3 daughters. And a young man fell in love with the youngest daughter, and he made up his mind, and he said to the father, "May I marry your daughter?" And the giant said, "Well, you may, but you have to first fulfill the 4 tasks that I give you." And the first task is, you see way down there is a lake. And I'm sort of tired of getting up in the morning, walking down to that lake in the morning to have my bath. So I'd like you to bring me the lake, so in the morning when I just wake up, I can just take a bath. And here's a basket you can do that with. And the young man was sort of, he didn't know what to say, but Rosalie, the youngest daughter, said to him, "Don't worry about a thing, I'll take care of it." So he agreed, and in the night, when everybody was asleep, Rosalie went down to the lake and sort of in her skirts took up the water to the giant's bedroom. And the next morning, the giant was so surprised when he woke up and he saw the lake lapping at the legs of his bed. The second task was, he had a big pot and he threw it into the deepest river that he could find. And he said, "Please bring the pot back to me." So the young man went down and tried diving, and he dived, but he just couldn't get so deep. It was just too deep for him. And Rosalie said, "Don't worry, let's go in the night." So in the night they went, and she said, "I'll dive, but when I'm down there, you must call my name. Otherwise I cannot get back up." And so they did. And the next morning, the giant was very surprised. He found the pot right sitting next to his bed. And the third task was to clear a large area of several acres of corn. He had to clear the forest and basically prepare it, plant the corn, and even ripen the corn so that by the next evening he had fresh young corn ears to eat. And the young man went down, and by sunset he had really practically accomplished nothing. So Rosalie went down and she spread her skirt, and already immediately the forest was felled. And with that same magic also, she prepared the ground and she grew the corns and picked the first ears so that they were there for the father to eat in the evening. The fourth task, the giant went to his wife and says, "How am I going to get rid of this guy who wants to marry our youngest daughter?" And the wife said, "Well, we should throw him off the horse." And so the giant told him, "You go down to that plain over there, there will be a horse all saddled, and you just have to bring that horse back." And then he said to his wife, the wife would be the horse, the mare, and the giant would change into the saddle and the stirrup, and the daughter Rosalie would be the bridle. Where you pull the horse with. But Rosalie overheard her parents tell that at night, so she said to the young man, I said, "Go easy on the bridle, because that's me, but go all out on the mare and the saddle." So the boy traveled down there, and the giant and his wife and the daughter took a shortcut through the forest. And when the young man came there was a horse all saddled up and ready. But he had brought a big wooden club with him. And so he mounted the horse, and before it could even start to buck, he whacked and whacked and whacked it. so that the horse, the mother, basically fell down and had to let go of the young man who could just step up. He wasn't thrown off the horse. Then he came back up to the house, and the giant and the others had made a shortcut, so they were there. And then the young man said, well, I have done your 4 tasks. May I now marry your daughter? And then the guy said, well, there's a few other things, basically coming back on his earlier promise. And that night, Rosalie said to the young man who loved her, he says, we should leave. And so in the middle of the night, they left, and she took a needle, a grain of white earth, and a grain of salt, and she spat on the floor. And then they both left as quick as they could. And the next morning, the giant called out to his daughter. He said, Rosalie, time to get up. Yeah. And then the spittle, the spit spoke back and said, okay, father, thank you. Yes, I'm getting up. I'm combing my hair. And so the giant thought, okay, it's my daughter, no problem. And so he went back to sleep. And a little later, he woke up again, and he called again out to Rosalie. And again, the spittle spoke up, I'm combing my hair, but the spittle was almost dry, so it had a bit of a raspy voice, and the wife didn't trust it and went to Rosalie's bedroom and saw the trick that had been played on them. So the giant set out and chased after them. And although the young man and the daughter were going as fast as they could, the giant just slowly, was going faster and coming closer and closer. When he was just about to get him, the Rosalie changed into an orange tree and disguised the young man as an old man sitting at the foot of the orange tree. And the giant stopped and said, hey, have you seen a young couple fleeing by? And the young man said, oh, I don't know, but please sit down and taste one of our oranges. One of the oranges is so good from this tree. So he did. And the moment he took a bite of the orange, he totally forgot about chasing his daughter and the young man. And he went back to his wife. And his wife said, you fool. Of course, that orange tree was Rosalie. And the giant again set off and slowly made up. It was faster. And when he was about to overtake them again, she turned the horse into a church. And she made the young man into the assistant of a priest, and she herself became the Holy Mary Virgin in the church. And when the giant stopped and said to the assistant of the priest, have you seen a young couple come by? And he said, shh, don't talk now. The priest is just about to start a mass. And you must come in and see the beautiful Holy Virgin that we have. And so the giant went in and he had a look at the Holy Virgin. And immediately he forgot everything that he was about to do, that he was chasing. So he went back to his wife and told her the story. And the wife said, oh, you old fool. Again, don't you see the Holy Virgin? That was Rosalie. Never mind, she said. Let me do this myself. You're obviously too stupid to do this. So off she sat. And she was also making up time. And slowly she came into reach of the young man and Rosalie. And Rosalie said to the young man, we cannot fool her. So she stooped down and she put the needle in the ground, and immediately a big forest, very hard, intricate forest came up. And for a time, they were fleeing on safely. But the old lady, cut her way through the forest. And once she was through there, again, she was making up. She was getting closer and closer and closer. And then again, as she was about to overtake them, Rosalie threw down the grain of white earth, which became a huge mountain. And again, they were safe on the other side, but the old lady had to climb up. She was panting, up the mountain and up the mountain, up the mountain, and she slid down the other side. And again, she set out after them. And again, she made up and she made up and she made up. As she about to overtake them, Rosalie threw down the grain of salt that she had taken with her, and that became immediately an immense sea. And Rosalie changed into a little sardine, and the young man changed into a shark, and the horse into a crocodile. And the old lady, waded into the sea and tried to catch the sardines, but the shark just kept coming and stopped her from doing that. Then she said, very well, but you have to stay in the sea for 7 years. So after 7 years, they came on land, on the shore. And, they were themselves again, and they wanted to basically marry, and they made their way to the grandparents' home where the boy had grown up. And but Rosalie couldn't enter because, this is Mexico. She was not baptized, so she couldn't enter the village. Otherwise, it'd be bad luck. So she sent the young man ahead and said, come back with a bit of holy water so I can get baptized. And said, but make sure that your grandparents don't hug you, because otherwise you will totally forget about me. And so the young man went to the grandparents, got the holy water, but he's so tired, so he thought he'd rest a little bit, and he fell asleep. And at night, the grandmother bent over and kissed him. And when he woke up, he'd forgotten all about Rosalie. So Rosalie waited for days and days and days. And then finally she saw a young boy playing a little outside the village, and she said, please bring me some holy water. So the boy did, came back, brought her some holy water, and she sprinkled it all over herself, and she went into the village. And there she learned that on urging of the grandparents, the boy was about to marry another young woman. And so she went straight to the grandparents' house and to the boy who she loved, but he had no idea who she was. He didn't recognize her. Somehow she managed to postpone the wedding with 3 days. And she organized a huge party, a huge fiesta. And she made 2 dolls, one that resembled her and one that resembled the boy that she loved. She invited everybody in the village, and of course also the boy, the young man. And after all the guests had arrived and sat down, Rosalie took up a whip, and she began to whip the doll, which was the young man, the boy. And she said, don't you remember when I brought the water up? You had to carry it up in a basket, and I brought it up, and whang! She cracked the whip. And every time she cracked the whip and hit the doll, the young man cringed with pain. Ah! And she said, and don't you remember the pot that I had to get from the deepest river, and how I did that for you? Whang! And again, he cringed in pain. And again, and she said, don't you remember the cornfield that I prepared for you, and the corn ears that I grew for you? Whang! And don't you remember the 7 years at sea that we spent together? Whang! And again, every time the boy cringed with pain from the whip. And at the last whip, suddenly his memory came back. And ignoring his bride-to-be, and with a cry of joy, he fell into the arms of Rosalie. Now, sometimes you really have to fight hard for the one you love. Thank you.